Welcome, everyone, to Under the Dome podcast presented by Nevada Policy. I am your host, Marcos Lopez, your Coalitions and Outreach Director. It is February 24th, approximately noon. We will be diving in today in the updates of what Nevada Policy has been up to this past legislative session, as well as, since it's our first webinar, welcoming various guests from all over the political world, including Wiz Rouzard of Americans for Prosperity, State Senator Dr. Robin Titus, Erin Phillip, founder of Power to Parent, Assembly Minority Leader PK O'Neill, and Bryan Wachter, the Senior Vice President for Government and Public Affairs of the Retail Association of Nevada. So what has been going on this past week? It is week 3. We have 13 more to go. First program that Nevada Policy testified at was the Baby Bonds Entitlement Program. The Baby Bonds Entitlement Program was proposed by Treasurer Zach Conine. What this program would do is every child that is born under a certain threshold, economic threshold, would receive a grant in an account of $3,200 that they can access when they turn for the first time at the age of 18 to be able to use that money for various purposes. Now, this is a new entitlement program that is being proposed. Nevada Policy is obviously concerned about the creation of a new entitlement program, particularly since it might reach people who might not even need it. The main problem that we have is that we believe the baby bonds fails to target the most needy. The reason we believe that is due to the expansion of Medicaid under Brian Sandoval. Medicaid now covers up to 134% of the poverty line, and the CHIP program, which would also be used to designate whether someone is eligible, covers up to 200% of the poverty line. This would mean that about 48% of Nevada households would be eligible for such a program if they had a child. If we have an entitlement program meant to help the most needy and the most impoverished among us, if 48% of households are eligible, it is not targeted clearly enough to help those who need the most help. But really, it really is based upon a deep economic misunderstanding of income mobility. America still has a strong income mobility. Where you are born is not the station that you are determined that you will be in 18 years later. We can see this in the congressional reports that people born at the bottom quintile often move up to higher quintiles. Most people do not stay. A economic quintile when you're born is very static. It is just where are you in that moment? But the economy is constantly in flux. Things are constantly moving. And moreover, we're also concerned about the opportunity for fraud. Nevada is uniquely bad at verifying eligibility for entitlement programs. And we see this in the Congressional Budget Research Service that shows that Nevada is the #1 state when it comes to errors and fraud in our SNAP benefits. So, of course, these are all concerning, especially if we're going to start a new entitlement program in the state. The second item that we were involved in was testifying yesterday against the fluorescent light bulb ban. This is being brought forward, being touted as a way to help reduce energy costs for consumers, as well as overall reduce our greenhouse footprint. Of course, LEDs are superior light source than fluorescent light bulb. No one is disputing that. But fundamentally, this is about consumer choice. And there is a belief that consumers are not going to be choosing the superior method, which is completely false. We can see it in the market trends of how LED is taking over in the marketplace in terms of light sources. I mean, there was a Department of Energy report that was published that shows that nearly half of all American households already use LED lights as the majority or all of their internal lights for their residential dwellings. This is showing that there is a strong demand for LED lights, that people are making the shift already for the reasons that the proponents of the ban are already trying to get the ban passed for. And this is all based on the belief that consumers can't make their own choices, that people aren't smart enough to make this. And this is what leads to these cost savings that they say this ban would cause to be overstated. Because it assumes that people aren't making these changes already, which they are. And whether it's fuel efficient vehicles, energy efficient light bulbs and appliances, all the heavy handed government regulation does is impose greater costs on late adopters and eliminate consumer choice. Moving to education, accountability is back on the table, as everyone is talking about. We know Lombardo has asked in an executive order for all the internal audit reports that the counties have done and what are they doing with that information, something that we are supportive of. But CCEA also came out last week and were joined by Democratic leadership demanding for a plan from the school districts of how they would spend the proposed $2 billion increase in education funding. We can expect these plans to be combed over closely and scrutinized by both sides. And the last item of note this past week that we are keeping an eye on is potential reforms coming to the Governor Office of Economic Development. Senator Neal, Democrat from Senate District 4, recently was quoted as saying, under current law, there is an imbalance that prevents the legislature from providing appropriate oversight in view of tax abatements. We are strongly support of bringing reforms to GOED, the Governor's Office of Economic Development. This has long been a source of cronyism, a place where public subsidies for private firms are misallocating resources that are better allocated on the free market. And moreover, when you're giving these tax abatements to whether it's a large stadium like the Raiders Stadium, where you're giving these tax abatements to large billion-dollar industries, all you're doing is shifting the tax burden to those who are unlucky enough to not be politically connected to be able to get those abatements. And really, this drives a deep mistrust of government when you have a two-tiered system where politically favored firms are able to take advantage of the political system and get tax breaks and tax incentives that are not provided for the full market in a fair playing field. So this undermines a lot of our free market system. So we are looking closely. We'll be reaching out to Senator Neal to work with them and see what we can do to help bring reforms to the system. But let's get down right to the rest of our show. Our first guest is Wiz Rouzard of Americans for Prosperity Nevada. He's a deputy state director. Americans for Prosperity is a wonderful organization. They operate in over 35 different states, working at the grassroots level to protect economic freedom and opportunity for all Americans. Wiz, how you doing?
Thank you for having us, Marcos. My name is Wiz Rouzard. I'm the deputy state director with Americans for Prosperity here in Nevada. It's been a pretty insightful and eventful week, as Marcos laid out, leading with the legislation to ban fluorescent light bulbs. We definitely oppose that, although we know the intent there is to move to a more efficient way of lighting our entire world. We believe that markets are already doing that with LED light bulbs. We don't need government meddling into that market space. The unintended consequences we can see could be very, very impactful to Nevadans, especially retailers, where an inspector would randomly walk into your establishment, and if you have fluorescent light bulbs, could issue fines and snowball that into a bigger problem. As if we don't have bigger problems, right, in Nevada altogether, where we're trying to still remain to be a competitive state for businesses. Speaking of businesses, another bill we'd like everybody to be aware of is a bill to increase the threshold with the commerce tax. And this one is being spearheaded by Jeff Stone. This bill looks to increase the threshold from 4 million to 8 million and ensuring that, Nevada businesses can access these type of benefits and growing that bill, Senate Bill 193. Senate Bill 193 we thought was a really, really good bill to definitely bring to people's attention and ensuring that the commerce tax threshold is increased. Hats off to Senator Robin Titus and Stone for spearheading that bill. We look forward to getting that support. Another bill that's in terms of healthcare is Assembly Bill 188 with Heidi Kasama, who is spearheading the right to try. Background with right to try. On the federal level, we work very closely with the Trump administration to pass right to try on the federal level. And simply what this is it allows certain experimental drugs to be accessible to doctors and patients and bypassing some of the FDA approval processes at the later stage. Right to try 2.0 helps facilitate that on the state level to more of a individualized plan for our individualized treatment for Nevadans. And simply what this is it allows you to access these drugs without having to first, get government permission and allow your doctor and patient relationship to be strengthened a lot more by accessing some of these drugs that often, if you're facing a terminal illness, could be life-saving. We believe that it shouldn't be the government hindering you from making those decisions, yet alone your doctor from being able to provide that. We applaud Heidi Kasama for an amazing job on really getting this bill together. And a little backstory with that was she actually pulled it from a bill that was introduced in 2015 by, at that time, Senator Orenshaw. And so Senator Orenshaw has also joined as a co-sponsor on this bill. And we look forward to working with all parties across the aisle to ensure that this bill is passed, and so that we can make sure that Nevadans stay one of the most premier states when it comes to medical, accessing medical care and attracting some of the best doctors there is. Other bills that we're definitely taking a look at and supporting is Senate Bill 92. This one's a street vending bill. Who here doesn't love their taco or tamales, lady or man, right? This bill just advocates economic opportunity. We met with Senator Edgar Flores, who shared with us the insights to that. And at the end of the day, when we talk about people wanting to provide for themselves or their family, we want to make sure that government barriers are not in the way in doing that. And Senate Bill 92 helps accomplish that, where all individuals are able to actually have a right to economic opportunity, whether it's selling tacos, tamales on the sidewalks, or hot dogs. We want to make sure that we're creating those opportunities for all Nevadans. And of course, as we know, when people are more economically stable and can access these opportunities, less government funding and services are sought after, and this alleviates the taxpayers in growing government and providing additional services. So we applaud that bill, and we look forward to testifying in support this upcoming Wednesday for that bill and getting our grassroots army behind that. We had a bill yesterday that was heard, and I just want to bring everyone's attention that when we talk about criminal justice and building the bridge, building a bridge between the divide between law enforcement and the community, we're talking about providing tools so that, more importantly, law enforcement can do the job at a level that meets public safety, and also making sure that the community is protected and making sure that disabilities or things that might hinder a person's ability to communicate effectively with law enforcement can be shared. And I applaud Assemblyman Miller for introducing Assembly Bill 40, which was simply allowing voluntarily all Nevadans to be able to put on a driver license if you are autistic. We had an incident that we know of that took place in Nevada where an individual who was autistic had issue or had an incident that took place with law enforcement. Law enforcement, to the best of their knowledge for what was happening, did what protocol required them to do. Unfortunately, it led to an outcome where an individual was deprived and mistreated. And so we were really excited not only to just see this bill, but to see the overwhelming support, especially from law enforcement, to have this type of tool. And then, making sure that it's voluntary. And I thought that was the biggest part for us that stuck out, is this is not requiring anyone to divulge any personal information on the driver license that they otherwise wouldn't want publicly. But it does create an opportunity for those individuals that feel that they need this information communicated when dealing with law enforcement to have the ability to do that through a driver license. So we were super excited to support that bill. And we look forward to supporting more bills that achieve that goal, where we're bridging the divide between law enforcement and the community to ensure that law enforcement is doing their job and providing the best public safety and protecting individual rights, while also ensuring that our community have the freedoms and liberty to live out their lives. So that's our update, Marcos. Looking forward to doing more of these with you guys, and looking forward to hearing what other updates everyone else is working on. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Wiz. Before you go, I did want to ask you, I know you guys have an event coming up at the end of this month or early next month, education and policy event being on the subject of healthcare. Might share a little bit about with us about that event?
Yes, we actually were planning on rescheduling that event. We ran into some issues with the LCB, but we've worked those out. So that's actually going to be pushed back to March, which I'll send on email. But these Lunch and Learn series are going to be held every month at the Capitol, where we are going to have different experts and speakers come out to discuss different issues. Next month, it'll be healthcare and education. And we look forward to bringing some amazing minds that have worked on these type of policies across the nation into our Capitol to ensure those who have decision rights around those issues or members in the community that are interested in learning more about these issues have the opportunity to connect with us on that through that event. So I will send out more information. I will send out more information, and I greatly appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share that. We were looking forward to doing it this upcoming Tuesday, but we did have to push it back to the last Tuesday of March.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Wiz, for coming on and sharing with you guys work. For those that do not know, State Senator Dr. Robin Titus is a Republican representing Senate District 17. She serves on the Senate Education, Senate Finance, and the Senate Health and Human Services committees. She previously served in the Assembly, where she was the Assembly Minority Leader before joining us over in the Senate. Senator Titus, how are you staying warm up there? I know it is a snowy day in Carson. They canceled everything in the building.
Right. I actually ended up, I was in Reno last night and we just headed home this morning, and it's been 4-wheel drive and slip and slide all the way home, but I'm back in Smith Valley now.
Sweet. I'm glad that you made it there safely. I know how hazardous those roads can be. When I first moved to Reno, driving to Carson, my first legislative day ever, I almost crashed and died because being from Miami, I'm not used to driving on those weathers. So it was quite the experience. But Senator, what are some of the priorities that the Senate Republican caucus is focusing on that you guys are hoping to accomplish this legislative session?
Well, I think one of the major issues has been education. I think it's a passion for all of us, but especially for our Minority Leader Gansert and Carrie Buck, Senator Buck. They both are, and Scott Hammond too, all educators. And so they're working hard. Unfortunately, our governor has expressed a commitment to education, improving education outcomes in Nevada and holding people accountable. So that's a major priority. For us also, the election reform has to be a priority, working hard to get our bill heard, to get some of this election reform done, and how long it took to get the election counted, the votes counted. That's absolutely one. I've been meeting hard to try to get my election bill heard. Met with the deputy of elections, Mark Washington, yesterday again, second time on my bill. Met with the chair of the committee to hear it, the senator to hear it, getting lots of pushback. So we'll see if any of these bills can get heard. So education, election reform, and then healthcare access. It's everybody talks about it, but then, we constantly hear folks talk about increase to healthcare, and then they put forward bills that would do anything but, right? They put forward bills that would, they want to take off the cap on medical liability. They want to, the public option. They want to make us see any person, and it's just a lot of regulations that inhibit or interfere with healthcare, but yet they say they want to have increased access. So it's all very interesting to me how one hand they say one thing and then the bills are putting in are absolutely crazy.
So if you don't mind, I actually would love to dive a little bit more into that, just because your unique background as a doctor give you such a wealth of knowledge in healthcare and how to reform this. Where's your sense of where the public option is today?
Well, hopefully it's dead. Hopefully the governor's not going to fund it. He has expressed that he does not support it. Frankly, the folks in the state that work for our Department of Health and are not supportive of it. They knew it was going to be too expensive. They knew from the start that why would any doctor come to this state if they were not going to be rewarded for having advancements in healthcare, who wouldn't be rewarded for spending that extra money on the latest piece of equipment for diagnosis, to do research here. We want to be a mecca for healthcare. We have two excellent medical schools now. We have a private school for doctors, DOs in Toro. We have another medical school in Rosemont, in Las Vegas. So Las Vegas actually has 3 medical schools, and they want research to happen there. They want to be the center. They want to be able to do transplants. And at the same time, none of that will happen if that public option goes through. So our governor recognizes that, and met with the deans of the medical school yesterday, and they're excited about their potential. They know we need graduate medical education slots, and to get that, we need the fellowship training. We need specialists to come here. That's not going to happen if we do that public option.
No, 100% correct. And for those that might be interested, that was Senate Bill 420 of the last legislative session, so that would be 2021. Doctor, one of the bills that you brought forward that we've been extremely supportive in the past has been your emergency powers legislation. Do you believe there's any chance that we were able to reform some of these now that the pandemic has subsided? Any opportunity that that bill might have to see the day of light?
Tell you, I met with the chair of the committee, Senator Renshaw, to hear that bill. I mean, I think it doesn't matter to me. Actually, it wasn't the chair of the committee. It was Senator Flores is the chair of that committee, and I sent him a letter. He wanted to know what would be different about this bill, and I told him it doesn't matter who's governor. There needs to be a clear check and balance. And my bill says 30 days. And when I signed on with Assemblywoman Dickman's bill about the reining in the powers, also strictly hers comes back to the legislature after 30 days, and she may have even changed that. But what my bill does is after 30 days, listen, not only do you have to come back to the state legislature for approvals, but you also have to look at each county and what is unique to that county when it comes to their health needs. Every county, we had hotspots during COVID. We didn't need to shut down our entire state, which is what happened. And so my bill is unique, again, from the healthcare kind of policy standpoint. And it's never going to get a hearing. I'm pleading with these folks. I've met with them. I sent them letters. I try to convince them that this is a nonpartisan bill. My bills make sense. All of my bills do. But they're not excited about hearing them.
And do you mind real quick, for those people who might not be too well informed of how the process works in Nevada, it's correct me, leadership of the chair of these committees does not want to hear a certain bill. There is no obligation for them to do so. Right.
I'll give you a little mini civics lesson of how this thing works, and it confirmed again on how this works in this and my new house in the Senate. We get to introduce a bill, and depending on whether you're a freshman or a returning assembly person, a freshman person gets 5 bills, and then they get 10 if they're returning. A senator, since we're seeing twice the amount of population, we get a freshman senator such as myself, I get 10 bills with 2 potential, one after opening day. Next session I'll get 20 bills. So what happens is you introduce your bills, and they what's called a bill draft request. It becomes a bill. We introduce it to the floor, and then the majority leaders decide where it's going to be assigned for a hearing. So if it's a healthcare bill, it'll go to healthcare. If it's a changes elections or a constitutional, go to leg ops. If it's a business bill, it'll go to maybe the finance committee. So it depends. And so the minority decides where it gets sent. Okay, so now it gets sent to that committee. The key is, will it get a hearing or not? They're under no obligation to hear that bill. So I've, last session, when I would meet with Speaker Frierson about my bills, he said, absolutely, don't talk to me about your bills. My chairs will decide if they're going to hear the bills or not. And I don't want to hear it. You go right to the chairs. So this session, I took a list of my bills, and I went and I made an appointment with Majority Leader Canizaro. And I said, here's my bills. And here's what they do. I've been told not to meet, in the assembly. The speaker didn't want to hear the bills. He wanted the chairs to hear the bills. But I've been told in the Senate that she's the one who controls the power. Because when I had met with Orangel, he says, there's the system for this. I can't agree to see this without that chain of command, essentially. And so I went and met with her, gave her my list, and I said, hey, I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste my time, but these are good bills. Can I get a hearing on bills? And so she's going to look at them, and then they meet and they'll decide which bills are going to get heard or not. I'm still pushing for all my bills, but whether they get a hearing or not is yet to be seen.
Sure. Well, we appreciate your willingness in continuing to fight for this. I know you're one of the hardest working people under that dome. My first session, I remember you taking meetings at 6 a.m. and I'm like, that is so early. But I mean, it's just, you are such a hard worker and a fighter for Nevadans that we definitely really appreciate it. Last question. There's been a lot of talk about what we're calling the Great Eight, which is the 8 Republican state senators. What is the general vibe that's been going on with the Great Eight? You guys are really the crusades to kind of help protect any veto from the governor. What's been the relationship with the governor's office? A little insight on that.
Well, our relationship is great with the governor. Heidi Ganser and Ben Kekeffer are good friends, and as they served in the Senate together for a long time. So that communication is good. And PK can address that. I know he's going to come on later, but I know that the minority leaders and Kekeffer and the governor have breakfast together once a week or once every other week, and they discuss legislation. I've met personally with the governor. So we take a role as the 8 of us as that one stopgap house. We take it very seriously. When, for example, and we were able to hold together, there was 2 bills that were vetoed by Governor Sisolak last session. Now, mind you, for Governor Sisolak to veto anything, that's how bad they were, right? And so they came out of the Senate though, and the question, they wanted to hear those bills right away again. And it was very clear, the 8 of us, very clear that we were going to sustain that veto. And so they were then pulled and never put to a vote because we stuck together. So we meet about these things, and we want to make sure that we give the governor cover if he is going to veto something. And so, I mean, we have that conversation. It's critical that we work as a team moving forward. And so we'll see. There'll be some that they won't put forward because they know we will stick together on some of the stuff. And there's others that maybe the governor won't veto that we may still have to vote no on. Certainly I'll vote no on. And so even if the governor is going to support it. So we'll see. Right now there's a lot of talk, but when at our first time where we could hold together as an 8, we did. So let's hope that continues.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining me. And I know you guys sometimes don't get enough credit for the work that you guys do on making sure that bills are less bad, even if some, unfortunately, they pass at times. So thank you for all that you do, State Senator. And hopefully we'll have you back on soon. I hope you have a good rest of your day and your weekend.
Great. Thank you very much. Last comment is I've already made some changes in significant health care bills that because the chair of the Senate Health Committee, we have a mutual respect, and there was bills I'm going to be a no on, and he changed them. So at least they're not quite as bad. So we do a lot of that work too. And it's not compromising. It's just trying to survive sometimes. So anyway, thank you. Have a great day. Looking forward to hearing some of your other speakers.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Next up, we will have Erin Phillip, the founder and president of Power to Parent. It is a community organization that seeks to empower parents in their education system. And it's quite a wonderful story of how they got started. And here she is. Erin, how are you doing?
Hey, Marcos, thanks for having me. I'm doing great.
Perfect. So why don't we start real fast? So for people who may not be familiar with Power to Parent, how did you guys get started? What is your main mission and goal?
Yeah, so just really briefly, when we started in 2015, I was actually at a school board meeting where they were introducing some pretty graphic content in regards to sex education. And I just began asking questions and kind of went down the rabbit hole and found out that a lot of what was being introduced in our public schools and had been being introduced for many years was outside sort of the scope of parents as far as, not leaving parents out of the equation, not letting them know what was being taught. And was also really not about sex education, for example, but a lot of what we see now it has been social engineering. And so as we kind of went down the rabbit hole, we realized that this issue of inappropriate content and other things in education had a more of a parental rights scope. And so in 2016, we officially filed as a 501c4 organization and began doing a lot of advocacy work and bringing parents to school board meetings and really teaching and empowering parents how to advocate for their kids. And then in 2017, we filed as a 501c3. So we have two arms of our organization where we do more political activity and then we do more of education. So this year, actually, we were funded and I'm sitting in an office in our first brick and mortar building in Las Vegas. And we also have chapters in 5 states. Across the country. Really, with COVID, parents have obviously woken up to what's going on within public education in general, parental rights in general. And so we're expanding rapidly and we've been really effective in just influencing policy and trying to be solution-based, not just bomb throwers. And I think we've been really effective in doing that.
Well, congratulations on your first brick and mortar. I mean, you do tremendous work and you're an extremely hard worker. And I do believe, as you alluded to, we are on the cusp of some big education changes and reforms. The pandemic really changed the game in a lot of ways, for better and worse, in a lot of different areas. What are some of the priorities that you guys are keeping track of this legislative session?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, I think we noticed and really recognized early on that school choice is a parental rights issue. And that's why we've married these two issues. And so we've fought really hard for school choice for a number of years. And as someone already mentioned, we have a governor who has now prioritized not just education, but specifically school choice. And so, we've seen that he's put forward in his budget $50 million for opportunity scholarships. Opportunity scholarships, if anyone is not aware, is a tax credit scholarship. So that is a way that the community, essentially it's a public-private partnership with businesses all over the state of Nevada where they can donate a portion of their tax dollars that goes to a separate fund. It's not an education fund, and it goes into scholarships for families who they meet the eligibility requirement of 300% of the poverty line and below. And so what has happened with that specific program we've seen is that it's really been used as sort of like dangling the carrot in front of a lot of these conservative groups like ours that have been fighting for school choice in order to get more public school funding. And that Democrats every session have increasingly tried to cut that program and have really tried to eliminate that program. It's been on the record, a lot of what is said is that we don't want these kids to lose their scholarships, and yet they go forward and they've cut this funding. And 2 sessions ago, about 1,000 kids lost their scholarships. So kids that were receiving this money who were attending private schools in Nevada. And actually, just as a side note, it costs less to educate a child when you are educating them with a school choice program like this, because about the average scholarship for a student is $5,500. And it can go all the way up to $8,200, but per pupil funding Nevada is around $12,000. So we're spending less money to educate these kids, but 1,000 kids lost their scholarships based on what happened in that session. And so and they also cut the caps so the program wouldn't grow. Essentially, they're trying to starve the program to death so that more and more kids will, as they roll off, we won't be able to add more kids and the program won't grow. So it's exciting for us as an organization, as has been a priority for a number of years, that the governor is not only going to increase the funding, but make this program permanent, because it hasn't been made, the funding hasn't been made permanent, which is why they're able to do so many tricks with it every session. So, and then the governor's also proposed that we raise the cap to 500% of the poverty level. So it's a family who's essentially middle to low income, it would raise that cap slightly. So you would be able to reach more families would be eligible for that funding.
And I think it's important to remember is, a lot of advocates for school choice, what we advocate is really an all of the above approach, right? Education, I think we're kind of stuck in this 20th century mentality that it has to be a brick and mortar school. You have to follow the bell, kind of that old factory setting. We should be changing the skill set of the 21st century and what it requires to be successful is completely different than this almost outdated model. There's a lot of exciting, innovating things occurring all around the country. And unfortunately, it seems like we're being left behind in Nevada. ESAs, something that we almost pioneered a while back in 2015, seems like there are states all around us, including Arizona, where this has now become law and people are succeeding on it, and we're falling behind.
Yeah. And Utah just passed education savings accounts just this last month as well.
We need to really catch up and really put forward the best foot in education. You mentioned a little bit about education funding. So what are some of your thoughts about what is generally being discussed about adding $2 billion more, maybe the Democrats' proposals, as well as adding another $250 million to increase teacher pay, and the general kind of message that the unions have been putting forward that $2 billion is now not enough?
Mhm. Well, I mean, I would start with your last comment, which is, I mean, when is it enough? And if you ask the unions that question, you won't be able to get an answer to that question. And so, you know, we know that the over the last several sessions, we've added more and more and more money. We've increased public education funding. Some of the highest tax rates or tax hikes also in history of the state to go to education funding. And every time that happens, they ask for more funding. Even when the governor mentioned that he was going to add $2 billion to education, public education funding in this budget, that the Democrats came out very quickly asking for another, I think it was it $250 million for teacher pay. And so, you know, we know that it's never going to be enough. And at the same time, there's different perspectives on how we should fund education and how we should approach education. But what I have seen in just, you know, my time and in my own child's education is that there is this continual status quo approach to education. And so when we just continue to throw money without accountability at the problem, then you're not getting your return on your investment for the taxpayers. This is not, you know, whenever you give government money, right? Government is notoriously poor with our money because it's, you know, it's easy to spend other people's money. And so when you get these large bureaucracies, you know, for example, Clark County School District, the 5th largest school district in the country, it's just layers and layers of bureaucracy. 80% of the budget for CCSD goes to admin, does not see a classroom. You know, only 20% goes to the schools. And that's really, really hard for people to understand because you just keep adding layers. And again, I think we should also tie it to test scores. We should also tie it to outcomes. And we know that we've been at the bottom for a long time. We are right now, I think, believe we're at 49th. We flip-flop between 49th and 50th on outcomes. And that's not just outcomes for graduation rates, that's test scores. That's college attendance. That's so many aspects that we're at the bottom. And, you know, right now it's like only a third of our students are reading at grade level in Clark County. It's the test scores are really, really shocking. So if you look at the outcomes and you say, should we put more money into a failing system? My opinion, my personal stance on that is going to be no, we need to have a different approach. And we've seen other states, and Florida is a great example of this, as you're from Florida, that they are continuing to be similar in per pupil funding as we are here in Nevada. And they were also at the bottom for many years. Around 2011, when they passed their school choice initiatives, they began to go up. And so now they're in the top 10 for outcomes and still remain in the bottom third for funding, per pupil funding. So when you look at that perspective, you get this injection of competition when you put school choice programs and you allow parents to access the classroom that fits their child. And what happens is you just get natural sort of that it's the tide that raises all ships. So public schools test scores go up when you put school choice programs into a state. And we have that data. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We know that is a reality for these other states who are adding, you know, a different approach to education. So it's a long way of saying, I think we should be funding education. I think we need to make sure that the way we're funding education is actually giving us the outcomes that we need so that our kids are educated and ultimately we have a workforce that we can hire from so that we can bring businesses to this state. And people always want to talk about diversifying the economy. We won't be able to really diversify our economy until we diversify education. And that's what we're really focused on.
There's a whole lot there, but it is. I recommend people, we on our Nevada Policy Solutions book, we have a whole section on education spending. And one of the main key findings there is that there is no real correlation between educational outcomes and the spending levels. I believe, in fact, I think Maryland might be the state that spends the most on education, and they're near the bottom in terms of their test scores. One last thing, Erin, is if some people want to get involved, get in contact with Power to Parent and join your parent union, how would they do so?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. So, I mean, I always say we're building a parent army, but you can find us at Power to Parent. That's power with the number 2 parent.org. And we're actually about to launch a new website here in the next couple of weeks. We're working really hard on it, but you can head over to our website right now and sign up to be a union member. Just give us your email address and phone number, and we won't spam you, but we do keep people updated into, kind of these policy things that we're dealing with, and then sort of things that are on the ground as well. And then if you know someone in another state that's looking for a union in their area, please let us know. We'd like to help them start one.
I love the whole concept, just flipping the union idea on its head and bringing parents together to affect positive change. I love it. Thank you so much. And thank you for all the great work that you do.
Thanks for having me.
Next up, we will be joined by Assembly Minority Leader PK O'Neill. Oh, that was fast. There he is. How are you doing, PK?
That's a tough question to ask. I was shoveling snow just an hour ago, and now I'm in the building doing some work.
I'm just amazed you're in there on a snow day.
Well, I had to come in and get some other work done, and I'm looking out the window and the snow's picking up again. So I'll be shoveling again, I know, this afternoon. So.
Well, for our guests and who might not be aware, so Assembly Minority Leader PK O'Neill is Republican representing Assembly District 40. He serves on the Assembly Commerce and Labor, the Assembly Revenue, and the Assembly Ways and Means. Just 2 of the most important committees in the building, right? Nothing too much.
That's what they say. I've got to tell you, not only am I in the building, but Bert Gurr's in the building, Ken Gray's in the building. We've got several Republican Assembly folks here in the building working today.
I love it. I love it. I will say, this is I believe it's my 4th legislative session. And don't believe what they tell you. There is a lot of work that does go on underneath that building in 120 days to get everything in order. But Mr. Minority Leader, what are some of the caucus's priorities for this legislative session?
Well, I'm going to say we can make this quick. When Senator Titus was on, I'll say ditto. We're looking at supporting the economy and growing our economy, diversifying the economy. We've got to redefine education. We've got to look at public safety. We've got to look at medical provisions, not only for medical health, but also for mental health too. We've got to provide a safe community so our businesses, so our families, so when the kids go to school, they have a safe school to learn in, so the teachers feel safe in the schools and aren't being attacked and can't expel the student. We've got a variety of topics, and I'll tell you, you were calling the Senate side, I forget what you call them, the
grade 8.
The grade 8. Well, we've got the Fab 14 here, the fabulous 14 in our caucus.
I love that, and I will make sure that all of our communications moving forward, when we talk about the assembly side, we will refer to you guys as the fabulous 14, the Fab 14.
As I say, we may be strong in numbers, but we're big in spirit and enthusiasm.
So a little bit about, I guess, the money committees. What have you guys been hearing about the proposed budget by the governor's office? I know most people don't understand of how it kind of operates. There's certain decision units that are brought forward, and you guys kind of go over what the agencies are requesting. You mind sharing a little light on that?
Well, the last several weeks, all we've been basically doing is listening to the various agencies present their governor's recommended budget. We really haven't gotten into the delving down in some of it in the policy, in the expense side of it, but they've been presenting their budgets, their needs. I will say the common line, just about with every agency, is that they're short personnel. They're unable to meet their missions in service to their communities, no matter what it is, DMV, public safety, Division of Child and Family Services. They're all having trouble meeting their mission, their assigned statutory authorities, because they are so short personnel. And they're so short personnel because we're competing with the local governments, counties and cities, and benefits and salaries. Fortunately, the governor has presented some increases in pay, some step increases, salary increases, and hoping to make us a little more viable and able to recruit against some of the locals. When I say locals, the cities and counties. And what I'm impressed, it's a balanced budget, and that's what he's given us. Now, we've had other people come in already from some of the school authorities or saying that they need more money given over to the school districts for such things as Erin was just talking about earlier on teacher salaries. That's going to be negotiated. Their union, they negotiate that with the local counties. Money is going into that pupil center funding program, and that's what they can go against. And the counties, the school districts have to decide, do they want to spend money here or they want to spend money there? And that's why the parents, getting back to Erin, she's spot on when she says parents have to get involved, totally, completely involved. They should be attending every school board meeting and saying what's important to them and stressing that to the school board. The school board then in turn gives it to the superintendents, and it filters down into the schools themselves on what are the needs of the schools in the specific districts. Because what happens in Elko is not the same as what happens in Vegas or happens right here in Carson City. We all have different challenges, but we've got to hear from the parents across the board and get them involved.
No, 100%. So that I would assume then that you will be looking forward to these reports if they're filed forward that were being asked of how the superintendents are going to spend this new $2 billion.
Well, I'm looking forward. I was happy. I was impressed when the governor a few weeks ago asked all the school districts to submit the various audits that have been done on their counties or on the schools. I asked during a hearing, I apologize, the days have run together. It was probably only 4 days ago, but it seems like 4 years already. But I asked one of the Department of Education, have they done studies on school districts, individual districts, looking at two schools, both middle schools, both elementary, whatever they, very similar schools, and why one outperforms the other in the same district, almost within the same zip code at times. And they haven't looked at that realistically to really identify why some schools perform better than others. And as Erin is saying too, and I hate to repeat her, that ability to compete with that opportunity scholarships, with the parents' involvement on choice of educational choice, what school they want to send their child to, that's what's made, I can carry it forward. That's what's made this country great. I've been out of college for several years, but I always remember always talking about in my business classes, you have to build a better mousetrap. Always, we go forward, we review, and we're striving to build better, and we've got to do the same thing in education. Right now, the governor is doing that. Governor Lombardo is building a better government to serve the people of Nevada, to serve the tourists of Nevada, and I can't compliment him enough for that. And as I said, the grade 8, as you may have said, and the fabulous 14, that's what we're working on to give them, and that's what we're working on to give the citizens of Nevada. That's what they deserve.
And I love that. And for listeners who might be too familiar, so Governor Lombardo has recently signed an executive order asking all the counties and school districts to give them all the internal audits or reviews that they might have done and what they have done in response to those. We think this is a great idea here at Nevada Policy. It's something that should be statutorily done already. And hopefully it's a change that can be done here in the following legislative sessions to make sure all that information is being compiled at the State Department of Education. So we're able to review and see exactly how the counties are dealing with these internal audits and these reviews. And are they doing any changes based on these, or are they just ignoring them? So very important work there. Let's talk a little bit about the Fab 14. So How
like
how is
that.
the general atmosphere within your caucus? I know, unfortunately, it is a super minority right now, but is there a good working relationship with the majority? Is there any hope for getting some of the bills heard that you guys are bringing forward? Because there is a great amount of wonderful bills, everything from election integrity down to cutting taxes that have been brought forward by your caucus.
First, I don't mean to correct you, Marcos, but I will not allow anybody to use the term super minority. We're unfortunately in a minority, yes, but there's nothing super about it. It's a sad case that we're in the minority. That's why we're just in the minority. But the caucus, as I said, we're small in numbers, but we're large in the enthusiasm, strength, and support we're giving to one another. Right now, the bills are still coming out. Unfortunately, I think we're about 20%. We've had a little over, I think, 235, 236 bills introduced so far. And don't hold me to this on the numbers. It's all probably about 20% of them have been Republican-sponsored bills. 30% of them, maybe 35% have been Democrat-sponsored bills. The remaining numbers are either committee bills or agency bills. So it's, we're in the minority, but the bills are coming out. We've already had some bills heard. We've got some bills scheduled to be heard. I have a decent relationship. I like to say I have a good relationship with the floor leader, Assemblywoman Sandra Howdege, and the speaker, Assemblyman Steve Yeager. And we're working together and we're addressing problems when they're small challenges or issues before they become blown up and really cause disruptions to the process. As our caucus believes, we are here for policy, not personality. Attack the policy if we like it or don't like it, but don't respect the person that is sponsoring and promoting that. It's the policy we're here for, not the personality.
Perfect. Well, on that note, we unfortunately are going to have to leave you, but thank you so much for coming and joining us today. Thank you for all the good work that you do under the dome. And I hope you have a good weekend and, stay safe shoveling the snow.
Aye, sure. Will do. And Marcus, I look forward to being with you again. Come on up and visit. You take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Our next guest is Bryan Wachter, the Senior Vice President for Government Affairs and Public Relations for the Retail Association of Nevada. Bryan, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for the opportunity here.
Bryan, for people who don't know, tell us a little bit about the Retail Association of Nevada.
Yeah, so the Retail Association, we represent the entire retail industry in Nevada. We have about 3,000 members that are all mom and pop, 1 or 2 location businesses here in the state. And then we do represent your large big box national brand retailers as well. The malls, pharmacies, grocery stores, electronic stores. And so we cover a very wide range of the retail industry. We capture pretty much the entire kind of supply chain from manufacturing into retail. And we are very active at the legislative session and then during the election cycle. And we try to make sure that legislation that's passed and introduced at the legislature can help our businesses continue to be able to thrive and grow without the hindrance of a very heavy-handed legislature.
And because of this position and the scope of the Retail Association in your members, I believe this probably gives you a deep insight of the economic outlook, kind of a pulse for how the economy is doing, how consumer spending, which is a major driver of economy, is functioning, supply chain issues. What are your general thoughts on our economic prospects in the state of Nevada?
Well, so goes Nevada, so goes the rest of the country, right? We are a state that is largely, more so than I think any other state, dependent upon discretionary and consumer spending. And uniquely, not just our own citizens, but the tourists that we're bringing in for whatever reason that they're coming here. And then we rely our economy very heavily on their ability to spend. And so when the nation starts having economic problems, Nevada, the nation gets a cold, Nevada gets the flu. And you look at today's financial numbers, right, where Inflation might have increased by 0.6% in January when we've been having decreases. Wall Street, of course, was more optimistic that that wasn't going to happen, and so that's why you get, you know, a 300-point drop in the Dow today. And so the economy is not looking great. And what we have feared is going to happen is a kind of a double dip recession, especially double dipping inflation. And as we know, historically, that leads to very dark places.
And generally, when it comes to this legislative session, obviously, because retail is one of the major sources of revenue for the government, you're very well versed in our taxes and kind of the budget aspect of the legislature. Is there anything in particular that you are keeping track of, any threats or any opportunities that might be coming down the pipeline?
No, absolutely. You know, retail accounts for about 50% of all revenue in the state, both the state, local, county, school boards, library. Retail is what's filling those gaps that make all of those programs and stuff possible. And you know, what we're looking at, and the Assemblyman, the minority leader, spoke about this, is making sure that the additional spending that is going to happen is non-recurring spending. You know, the $1.9 billion surplus that's in addition to the $2 billion in additional revenue that the legislature might have going forward, but that $1.9 billion surplus is coming largely from sales tax and then the gaming tax, and those two revenue sources are largely responsible for that $1.9 billion. And so we have to ask ourselves, is that something that is going to continue? Or are we just going to have this little nice chunk of surplus? And so we are very cautious that we do not believe sales tax revenues will continue to stay as high as they have been. And so we're taking a look at the budget in terms of, is this sustainable spending? Are these programs that can be easily cut? Should we need to look at reducing the budget? And then if not, are the people who are proposing spending this kind of surplus money on ongoing spending, do they have a revenue plan for that? How are we going to pay for it? You know, in continuation. And those are all the things that we are really looking at the budget. Is our businesses going to be on the hook in 2025 when they need to raise taxes to pay for the amount of spending that they're going to do in this session?
And that's extremely important subject, something that Nevada policy has been warning about. I think I've probably mentioned it every single week so far that we've done these updates. You know, we've been definitely promoting that there shouldn't be any new spending programs. You want to save most of that surplus, put it either in the rainy day fund to make sure we can keep government afloat if we do have any downturns. And then secondly, pay down some of the PERS. That is our second suggestion, which has reached our peak of new high of over $18 billion in debt. And so looking forward, I mean, do you feel that this will be a business-friendly legislative session, or are you concerned that we might see some bad legislation kind of proceed forward that we might have seen in previous sessions?
Yeah, so all of the above. We are looking at a kind of a new age in Nevada legislative politics. You know, the minority leader pointed out that they are in the minority in the Assembly. We are in the minority in the Senate. They're one seat away from not being able to sustain a gubernatorial veto. And that has dramatically changed, I think, the thought process, and certainly shifted the building in a much more ideological way that as a business industry, we are trying to attempt to essentially, how do you lobby California now? You have Democratic majorities. They were elected with Democratic special interests. You know, the trial attorneys is a good example of that. We're going to have a med-mal bill that seeks to raise the cap on frivolous medical lawsuits from $350 million to, I was in a meeting with the speaker yesterday, and he said somewhere between 2 million and unlimited. And so you've got med-mal. There's a huge workers' comp bill that is going to be dropped by the trial attorneys, and that is going to dramatically increase the cost of business. It's not going to help our workers, but we are fighting these kind of bigger issues. And as a business community, there's unfortunately not a lot of help that the Republican caucuses can give us in this particular session. And so we're very thankful for the governor's office. We're thankful for the both minority leaders, but how do we start figuring out how to influence a very heavily Democratic majority Nevada legislature and keep it business friendly? And that's the unique challenge that we have in this particular session.
Sounds like you have a full plate ahead of you. My last question for you is, you kind of touched a little bit, but what has been your relationship so far with the governor's office, and what prospects do you believe, positions of power that he might be in moving forward, to be able to keep some of these bad ideas in check?
Yeah, certainly. We were one of the few business groups that came out in support of then Sheriff Lombardo for his campaign. We were on the transition team, and so we've been working very close with the governor's office. I think a little bit of the last 4 years of Sandoval and then Sislak has made it to where we've had to figure out how to work at the legislature without being able to count on that governor's office, that veto. And so we're confident that a lot of these policy decisions and stuff we can clean up and get to a point where we don't have to ask the governor to veto. And he's made several public statements that he's going to be very considerate, very careful when he looks at those vetoes. And so we appreciate him putting that kind of pressure on the legislature, but we really hope that we're able to solve a lot of these policy problems that we're having in the building before they even reach the governor's desk.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Bryan. It has been a pleasure to speak to you and very insightful on what you're seeing and what the business community is dealing with when politics just gets in the way. Do you want any last words for us?
I want to throw a quick shout out. There is a bill up on Monday, and that's the reason I would add it. This is SB 179. Senator Hammond is running the bill. It's actually kind of, I don't want to say an anti-trial attorney bill, but it will put a lot of roadblocks and hurdles on some of these frivolous lawsuits. Specifically 2 issues. One, and the Review Journal ran an article a couple of weeks ago on kind of that Mormon Ponzi scheme and third-party litigation. That's in the bill. It would add a lot of transparency to those transactions, as well as stop lawyers from false advertising. So you can't say your medicine is evil or this is a health alert, and actually make them take into consideration that they're messing around with people's health. And that bill is scheduled in Senate Judiciary at 1 o'clock on Monday, and very much encourage you to listen to that hearing and get involved if it's something that you think is going to be helpful. It's going to lower the cost of business in the entire state and will lead to a decrease in medical costs. And so it's a great bill, and I encourage everyone to take a look at it on Monday.
Perfect. I will definitely make sure to go read that over the weekend. Thank you for joining us, Bryan. Try to stay warm if you are up north. It is a snowy day.
I've got my fireplace. It's perfect. So no, thank you.
Perfect. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this week's Under the Dome wrap up. We will be re-releasing this on a podcast, as well as the videos, cutting snippets of the interviews and putting it out there for public consumption. But thank you so much. I will see you next week at 2 p.m. for our audio briefing, and we will have another webinar at the last Friday of next month. So I hope to see you there. Thank you so much. And as always, go visit nevadapolicy.org, visit our bill tracker at nevadapolicy.org/bill tracker, and have a